With Google Stadia officially shutting down, I think it's time we start talking alternatives. I'm going to be discussing both GeForce Now and Xbox Cloud Gaming in this video. If you're wondering why I'm not discussing Amazon Luna, simply put because it's not available where I live and I feel like a lot of people are in that same boat. With all that said, it's time we break it all down and get to it. I want to start things off by stating one very clear fact. There is no true alternative to an all-around cloud gaming service like Google Stadia. No matter where you go, you're gonna have to give up and get used to certain things that you may not want to. But it's not all bad news because certain other things are actually done better on these services than they were on Stadia. I'll do my best to explain it all, and we're gonna kick things off by talking about GeForce Now. I've been saying it for quite some time, but I truly believe that GFN is in the lead when it comes to overall visual fidelity and latency, even surpassing Stadia in both of those topics. That said, there is one topic where Stadia beats it at, and it can be a deal breaker for many people out there. And that's overall convenience. GeForce Now is very much so PC gaming in the cloud. And in my opinion, that's a very drastic change from what I would have considered Stadia to be, a console in the cloud. Like PC gaming, it's a bit more of a premium option. You have to pay for a subscription and the games on top of it. There is a free tier, but I would consider it more of a free trial as it's a good way to test your connection, but I don't think it's a true solution to actually playing in the cloud consistently. The next step up above it is the priority tier for $9.99 a month. You get up to 1080p 60fps streaming and a GPU capable of RTX on. I do need to point out that there is a 6-hour session length and you do get priority access to queues, so you may still encounter a short queue even while paying for priority. In my experience, that's only happened with Cyberpunk 2077's launch. It lasted for a couple of hours and I never waited more than 5 minutes. When it comes to the overall session length though, I think it's a non-issue. I know very few people who actually play for over 6 hours straight, but if that does apply to you, you just simply relaunch the game after your session is up and then you have another 6 hours on top. I think it's more of a thing to stop people from doing some sort of AFK farming method if I'm being honest. But to continue, there's another tier, and just like in PC gaming, it's more of a premium price, but you're gonna be getting a more premium experience. It costs $20 a month, it's what I currently use, and I think bar none, it is the best in cloud gaming in terms of visuals and latency, and it's not even close. You see, the 3080 tier will make sure you get a 3080 every time you launch a game, which means you have no problem running whatever game you're trying to play. It's one high-end GPU after all. It's also the option that supports 4K like Stadia does, except in this case, since it's running on a high-end GPU, your games will be running natively at 4K. But another very important detail is that it's the only streaming service as of right now that supports up to 120 FPS streaming, which in my opinion makes this the best cloud gaming service for competitive gamers, but more on that in just a second. Another big benefit for GeForce Now is that much like Stadia, it has support for touchscreen controls, controller, and mouse and keyboard. The key difference here is that mouse and keyboard and controller support isn't guaranteed for every single game, which isn't necessarily a bad thing because it does allow for other PC-only titles to make their way over. In terms of game library, there's a ton more games available on GeForce Now to play than on Stadia. There's well over 1,300 titles. Included in that number are a lot of free-to-play games, more so than were available on Stadia as well, and that includes super popular titles like League of Legends, World of Tanks, and much more. To put it into numbers, there's at least 128 free games you can play right now on GFN. Now let's talk about the convenience issue. Unlike Stadia, GeForce Now is very much so a service. It doesn't try and be a platform. There is no sort of dedicated friends list just for GFN friends. You're gonna have to be dealing with multiple launchers just like they do on PC gaming, which means you're gonna have to have a Steam account, a Ubisoft Connect account, an Epic Games Store account, an EA Origin account, and the truth is that this sort of thing can be a real turnoff for a lot of people. While you can go into the settings of GeForce Now and log into your Ubisoft, Epic Games, and Steam account and have it log you in automatically every time you boot up a game off of those storefronts, I have still on rare occasion clicked play and then be brought to a login screen. Not much of an issue if I'm on my PC and my keyboard is in front of me, a much bigger problem if I'm trying to play in the living room TV and don't have a Bluetooth keyboard on hand. And the truth is that as a Stadia user, stuff like this really is annoying to deal with. I've been PC gaming for years, so it's not a deal breaker for me, but I can totally see somebody who primarily gamed on Stadia not being a fan of this and being a deal breaker for them. So after taking it all into account, both the good and bad, who is GeForce Now best suited for? I've said it plenty of times already discussing it, but I think PC gamers will find a home at GFN very easily. But there's another demographic that I slightly touched on earlier, and that's the competitive gamer. If you're big into multiplayer gaming and you like to win, this is the service for you, there's absolutely no question. Not only does the visuals and latency match Stadia, but it gets surpassed here with the 3080 tier. It's so good in fact that in my own testing and Digital Foundry's testing, the 3080 tier is capable of having less latency than a local Series X. As somebody who primarily plays multiplayer shooters like Fortnite, Rainbow Six Siege, as well as Apex Legends, I can tell you right now I have no problem keeping up with my PC friends while playing on GeForce Now. And that's really the best testament I can give you to how well it works. Now on the flip side, who isn't this service for? And I would say anyone who wants a console-like experience. This just simply isn't aiming to be that. I will say they have pushed out updates to make the overall user experience better, but it's still not at the level that Stadia was at. Now if you do happen to be one of the gamers who want to go the hybrid route of local and cloud gaming, GeForce Now is the perfect partner for PC gaming. So if you're going to be gaming on PC, GFN is the cloud service for you. And that's because your game purchase and save file can cross over. Next up, let's talk Xbox Cloud Gaming. This is the second option that I think has a lot of potential for people to gravitate towards. And for good reason, it's built off a console platform that already exists, and it seems to be getting a lot of updates in a rapid pace. That said, it's not the perfect solution either. You still have to pay for a subscription to access it for any other game that's not Fortnite, and it comes at the cost of $14.99 a month. You do get access to a huge library of games via Game Pass, but not all titles support the cloud. Another important detail is that in the here and now, you can't just buy a game and outright own it to play on the cloud wherever you want, it has to be on the Game Pass library. And yes, the standard rule of Game Pass games rotating in and out also applies to the cloud here. Now they have stated that this is something they're working on, they want you to be able to buy a game on Xbox and play it via the cloud, but we don't know the details of how that'll work. This very well could be another case where you have to pay for a subscription and the game on top. And that small detail of things coming in the future, you're gonna notice is a bit of a repeating topic here. Now that you get the gist of how XCloud works, let's talk about the pros and cons. First up, and the biggest pro, is that it's built off Xbox's platform, which means it already has access to a lot of big third-party games. There's a reason so many people often say Game Pass is the best deal in gaming after all. And while not every game available on Game Pass supports XCloud, I would say the vast majority and the biggest hits do. So at $15, it's really not that bad of a deal to get access to streaming as well as over 100 games. Not to mention, any first-party games from Xbox Game Studios are added to the service day one. And with their recent purchase of Bethesda and their current ongoings for the acquisition of Activision Blizzard, there's potential for a lot of major games to be a part of that sub. Call of Duty, Diablo, Fallout all come to mind, and that's just scratching the surface. And this is the very thing that XCloud excels at when compared to the rest. Their content is hard to compete with. Not only are you guaranteed big AAA titles day one as part of your subscription at a low cost, but also a ton of indie games also arrive day one. For example, a big one that will be showing up is Hollow Knight Silksong. Xbox simply does a good job of securing content for their Game Pass subscription. In that topic, they definitely surpass Stadia. But what it lacks is what GeForce Now and Stadia do very well, and that's stability. When I boot into a game via Stadia or GeForce Now, I'm never left questioning how my experience is going to turn out to be. But sadly, I can't say the same for XCloud. I've noticed that whenever I play during peak hours, my visual feed definitely has some issues. Be it major artifacting, a weird scanline effect, or added latency to the overall experience, it definitely jumps up and down. And other times it can be perfectly fine. This is something I really want to see get fixed because it's a huge problem in my books. Another important factor you need to know is that as of right now, it runs on Series X hardware but can only stream at 1080p resolution. They have had talks about increasing the overall resolution, but once again, we don't know the details of how that's going to work. This could lead to an increase in price, maybe be a free add-on, or maybe a new tier just for XCloud 4K. But in the here and now, all we know is that it's coming. Another feature that has been talked about but hasn't yet arrived is mouse and keyboard support. Once again, we know that it's on the way, and recently the Xbox app has had a way to filter out games that support mouse and keyboard, but when you launch into them, neither of them actually let you use it. The interesting detail here is that since the games are technically running on Series X hardware, does that mean the games need to be updated to specifically support mouse and keyboard on the console versions as well? Because if that does end up being the case, there very well may be games that do support both controller and mouse and keyboard on PC that won't have the same features on Xbox. On the flip side, in terms of controls, XCloud does feature the best touch integration. And that's simply because a lot of developers actually have touch-specific controls if you're a mobile gamer. Once again, taking it all into account, who is this for and who isn't it for? If you want the easy-like experience of clicking play and then just being launched right into a game, this is the closest you're gonna get to what Stadia offered. That's not to say you won't be giving up a few things here and there, but in terms of convenience, it's fairly close. Better yet, if they deliver on everything they've promised for the future of the service, it's gonna be very much so on par once you can buy your games and use mouse and keyboard. But it's not going to be for the type of Stadia gamer who really appreciated the stability and the visual quality of what Stadia offered. In my own testing, the stability just isn't there. There are times I boot up a game and it's just not playable enough for me to continue playing it. Latency is another topic. I have heard some people have a great time with XCloud, but in my experience, while it has gotten a lot better as of recent, it's still not up to par with Stadia. To be clear about it, I have no problem playing competitively using GeForce Now's 3080 tier, I had no problem playing multiplayer casually on Stadia, but I wouldn't be playing multiplayer games on XCloud. This may just be a specific scenario of me living too far from a server, but yeah, that's just my experience. And lastly, if you do happen to be going the hybrid route, yes, buy an Xbox Series X and S and use XCloud. I would have loved to have considered PlayStation and PlayStation Plus Premium, but the reality is that while the streaming works, they're way behind in terms of features. Ultimately, I don't think there's a one-to-one alternative for Stadia, but I do think both GFN and XCloud show a lot of promise for the future. At the end of the day, some things you're gonna have to give up on until they get added to one of these services or become a standard among other cloud gaming options. I know some people may bring up the fact that I'm not talking about other services such as Shadow, Boosteroid, and all that, but I have my own specific concerns. Technically speaking, I do worry about those games actually being pulled back from those services if the third-party publishers involved would care to do so. And then there's also the fact that there's startup companies that are going against colossal giants in the industry like Microsoft, Amazon, and Nvidia. And with that, we've wrapped up today's video. If you enjoyed it at all or found it helpful, be sure to hit that like button as it really does help the channel out, and if you're wanting more content like this, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell as well. If you have any remaining questions, leave them down below or join our new community Discord, links in the description, and you can ask me there. As always, thank you for watching. This has been The Virtual Cloud, giving you the latest and greatest on everything cloud gaming related, and until next time, I'll catch you in the clouds.